Hello and welcome to Chatty AF, the anime feminist podcast. I'm Dee Hogan, a writer and editor for AniFem. I also run the anime blog The Josei Next Door, and you can find me on Twitter at Josei Next Door.
Hey, I'm Vrai Kaiser. I'm a contributor and editor at Anime Feminist. I run a blog called Fashionable Tinfoil Accessories, and I write all over the internet. You can find me on Twitter at WriterVry, or at the Twitter for my other podcast that I host at TrashPod.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm an editor and writer for Anime Feminist, and I also have the blog Heroine Problem, heroin with an E. And my Twitter is allsoon_no-dere.
And today we're heading into the home stretch of our watch-along of the 1990s shoujo fantasy, Fushigi Yugi. This week's podcast covers episodes 41 through 46, where everything happens. Miaka arrives in Seiryu. She meets 3 geriatric celestial warriors. Yui summons Seiryu. Multiple people die. And to top things off, Miaka, Yui, and Tamahome end up back in the real world. As that summary suggests, the plot is back, the supporting cast has returned, and we're out of the Badlands just like we promised. But that doesn't mean we don't have to wade through some bullshit along the way. The good news is most of the bullshit is front-loaded into the first episode of this stretch, which is my segue into the first episode of this stretch, where Miaka and Tamahome are pretty infuriating. And we basically begin with the warriors reaching Seiryu and Tamahome immediately breaking up with Miaka and not telling her why.
Because we needed more of this bullshit.
Yeah, like, hey, Tamahome, remember how pissed off you were when Miaka tried to break up with you for no reason out of nowhere? Why are you doing the same thing to her? Literally, exactly the same thing.
But mine's different because Dad told me to.
And I'm also immediately, kind of slobbering over another girl.
That, it was bad enough that we have to contrive another reason to keep them apart for a little bit longer so you can have the big reunion that's dramatic. But also, you, Watase, not all women be competent.
Shifang is hands down the worst part of this one episode stretch, because I think there are some genuine sort of reality poking its head in terms of we're trying to date each other over 2 realities basically, and one of us might be fictional.
Just me.
There's a genuine issue there that these characters do need to work through. Maybe
listen,
Tamahome could talk to Miaka. Yeah, it's the ultimate long distance relationship. And, obviously Tamahome should talk to her, which is super infuriating. Then he's kind of an asshole to her throughout this episode, which we can talk about a little bit later. But, yeah, Shifang is 100% the worst part of this because
she serves no purpose other than to make Miaka jealous.
Yeah, she is DTF and has no personality or point to the story other than just forced drama. She just vanishes. She has no character once it becomes clear after, an episode that Tamahome clearly still loves Miaka and isn't going to just, quit.
She can cook better. She's better at being a girl.
God, and they have that obnoxious scene in the kitchen where they're, sort of cattily sniping at each other over Tamahome, even though Shifang has hung out with him for, I guess a day. And like Vrai said, it's that... And the thing about Fushigi Yugi is, the stuff with Miaka and Yui feels like it is attempting to push back against this women be competent idea. They're being kind of forced into... Miyaka's being forced into the situation she hates. She doesn't want to compete with Yui, even though, everyone tells her she has to at every turn, even back home when they were studying for exams.
Right.
So I think there's a part of the series that is dealing with that trope in kind of a semi-critical way, I think. But then Shifang shows up, and it's just that. It is just women be competent. And it's really egregious.
And then, I know this is a little bit further down and we're going semi-chronologically, but then there's another disposable woman who just exists in the background. I find the Empress very infuriating in a minor way.
We will absolutely get to Rebound Empress, because I do want to talk about that once we get there, for sure. But for now, we'll just focus on some of this, again, the early bullshit, as I lovingly refer to it. And it's frustrating too, because ultimately it really doesn't amount to anything. I think Tamahome having this sort of sort of crisis where he finds out about this Byakko warrior situation where the priestess couldn't be with the one she loved. Like, I think them realizing that is like a worthwhile plot point. It's just the fact that they keep passing the bad communication ball back and forth, and Tamahome is an ass.
Right. There's a way for this to be a problem for these characters in their relationship without arbitrarily making them not talk to each other.
Yeah, which you'd think at this point they would be past, because as Caitlin pointed out, this shit has happened before, and they don't like it when it happens, so they should stop doing it. And Tamahome does. I mean, I guess I'll give him some credit. He does, like, when he finds Miaka again, he's like, look, I'm sorry, that was stupid of me. I should have told you what was going on. Let's work this out, kind of thing. But say that from the beginning, dude.
I think, like, there's interesting ways to do sort of characters realizing that there's this huge obstacle to the relationship coming down the line that could be, like, it could basically amount to a time limit. And then they spend, facing a reality where they are spending their lives separated from the person they love. Like, I think there's a way to do that and have it be really effective.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
When that's well done, that's actually honestly, like one of my favorite sort of like tragic romance tropes. But this is just like the way they do it is really like, first of all, the way Tamahome handles it is really eye-rolly, and it gets really sort of pushed aside. And also, one of the things that gets me, and this is sort of one of the things that has sort of soured me against Fushigi Yugi for a long time, was sort of the way they romanticize it. Spending your entire life longing for the one person, decades, spending over 100 years longing for this one person that you loved.
Tatsura hung out in that shrine for 90 years.
And
we'll talk. I'm sure we'll. You know what? We can go ahead and get into part of that now. I think this is a good moment to talk about that. Well, and then on the flip side, Suzuno does move on with her life. Like, she marries somebody else and has a kid.
But it's kind of this. It's the same problem I have with the anime version of Paradise Kiss, which is a whole different rabbit hole, where like, yes, another partner does exist, we never see them.
Yeah, like, you don't, it doesn't feel like Suzuno has moved on, even though she has clearly, like, lived to marry and reproduce. Like, it doesn't feel like that, because she and Tatsura were reunited after life, and it's so romantic.
Fuck her husband, I guess, and also her descendants.
Like her kids are watching, just like, wait, what about Dad?
Yeah, I feel bad for Dad. I mean, one would hope they had a good supportive marriage. But I mean, you figure what the time period they would have gotten married was like the 30s, so it totally could have been an arranged marriage. Like,
yeah.
And I mean,
there's some.
Like, I guess it tracks with, like, for example, I've read a lot about women who come out later in life as lesbians after they feel like they've done their duty of getting married and raising a family. So I guess that's a mindset that, could be just an expected romance trope.
I mean, but also, like, just sort of the it's going back to first love is the best, most purest love.
Yeah.
And the person you fall in love with when you're 15 is the person that you're destined to be with forever.
That is a perpetual annoyance for me. And I've kind of just had to learn to kind of accept it, because a lot of fiction works with that trope, and a lot of stories I like work with it. And so, as it's annoying, and there are just days where I have to go, well, okay.
Yeah, it's just that is one of the things that I can, like, almost like pinpoint, like, this is something that made me make choices in my life that I probably shouldn't have, like.
I understand what you mean. Yeah, that sense of, like, romanticizing that, like, one true love, and not, you can only really love one person, and it's not, it's very damaging, for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I mean, it can.
Yeah, like that one line where she's like, "There won't be high school for me," and I'm like, "No."
You know what really frustrates me about that is initially Miyaka decides to live in the book world. One, kind of on a spur of a moment emotional decision, but two, because she doesn't think there's any way Tamahome can come back to her world. First of all, I did like that Tamahome basically says, okay, if Miyaka can't live here, I'll just find a way to live in her place. That's fine. So there is a kind of a balance there where it's like they're both willing to give something up for each other. But then that doesn't really, like, Miyaka doesn't think, oh, hey, Tamahome's in my world now. I don't have to live in the book forever. Like, she never really considers that option, which is very frustrating to me. That
Tamahome's
she wouldn't even think
dead.
it. Yeah, Tamahome isn't really leaving. I mean, like, I understand them wanting to get back, and we're jumping ahead a little bit, it's fine. I understand them wanting to get back to the book at that moment in time because they feel like they've deserted their friends in the middle of a war.
Yeah.
And they don't want to abandon them.
They sort of need to take care of that business.
Yeah. So I understand the focus there of, like, no, we need to go back and we need to, help resolve this however it gets resolved, because we don't want to just, like, be like, sorry guys, have fun, take all the responsibility. We out here making out. So I get it at that moment, but the fact that there is not even a consideration on Miyaka's part of, like, oh, hey, Tamahome is here, so we could live here. This is an option. He seems down for this option. Is frustrating to me, that because as we talked about a few weeks ago, like, the idea of the woman giving up everything is very common. And the fact that the series doesn't seem to be challenging that at all is frustrating, I think.
It's a bummer, especially when, like, all things, if the writing of the plot overarching weren't so frustrating, Tamahome as a character has really grown a lot. It's just that just that there's all this bullshit.
Yeah, and I mean, Miaka as a character, I think, has grown a lot too, except for when the plot calls for her to make the same dumb mistakes.
Definitely.
She just running off on her own again.
Yeah, that's actually, I just have that as a note, and then the word again is in all caps. And you can feel the rage from my computer screen. The only benefit to that is she does get to slap Nakago.
Which is good.
I did like it. I was like, do it again.
But on the other hand, Chiriko does get killed.
Yeah.
Yes, and let's put a pin in that. I do want to get to. We're going to get to that, but I want to kind of talk about some other stuff before we do.
Yeah. One more thing on Miaka and Tamahome before we talk about is, I think what I find frustrating about them is I really crave stories that have the couple get together early on and then spend the rest of the story working out issues in their relationship as it develops. And this feels like it should be that, but then the manufactured drama, all of it in its various forms, seems to exist to force them to come back to these major culminations that are equivalent to the big first love confession or big first moment over and over again, rather than the more mundane, mature, less exciting developments that an actual relationship would have.
Into a more kind of comfortable rhythm with each other. I do agree with that. It does very much feel like Watase is pretty sure there's only one way you can generate drama or interest or just conflict in general between a couple, and that is to keep, like, ripping them apart for reasons usually involving poor communication.
Yeah, and that's pretty common in shoujo manga, I think. There was a lot of stories where all of the tension is based on, like, they can't get together, or they do get together, they can't communicate, or one of them wants to have sex and the other one doesn't want to have sex, or they do want to have sex but they can't have sex for some reason. And, like, that is the main conflict of probably, like, 50 to 60% of the shoujo manga that I've been reading, if not more.
This is making me miss
a lot
Mars.
of shoujo manga lately. Oh God, Mars! But that is completely off topic.
It is very much a shoujo thing. One of the things that, and I don't know, this may be completely accidental, but there's a lot of little lines in these two episodes that kind of made the bullshit bearable for me, because it almost felt like the characters were becoming aware of their own bullshit.
Right. Yeah, I think I know what you mean.
Tetsuya calls it a trend. He's like, this is just like a trendy drama. And I'm like, it is, Tetsuya. You are correct. Tamahome makes, I have a couple of lines kind of noted here. Tamahome makes a line about how we just keep missing each other. Like, why are we always missing each other? Miyaka notes that she runs off on her own without thinking, and then Nakago, damn him, I actually agreed with him when Miyaka runs off on her own into the temple and he runs into her. He's like, you just lack the ability to learn, don't you?
Yeah,
and that's
like
very much how I felt. Like, he's being an asshole, fuck you, Nakago, but that was very much how I felt at that moment too. I'm like, come on, Miyaka, you should know by now this does not end well.
Yeah, and it's like, because, and like I said, I feel like it's kind of inconsistent characterization, because I feel like a lot of this show has been sort of her learning to accept her responsibility and grow into her role as the priestess, but then she just like, every time, like, they need a plot beat to happen, she just fucking goes and runs off, and it's like, Miyaka, okay, you have two choices here. Stop running the fuck off, because every time you do, someone gets killed.
Yeah.
Or learn how to defend yourself, because you are a completely helpless baby, like, which is, I'm not going to fault you for it. You're a 15-year-old girl from modern day Japan. Like, it's totally normal that you don't know how to fight, but, like, you've been there for months. You can learn how to do, like, poke someone with a knife. Like,
well, and she technically has the sword that she never carries with her. She just leaves it in their luggage all the time. But, well, and it's like, if a character makes a conscious decision to say, if that's just not, like, if Miyaka does not want to be a fighter, I don't want to fault her for that, but then you make sure you put yourself in situations where you're not going to need to fight your way out of them.
You have to stop running off on your own.
Yeah, and I kind of get, like, when she first sees Yui and Nakago, I get the impulse there of, like, I should see where they're going. But then she gets to the temple, and I'm like, okay, this would be a good time to rendezvous with your pals and explain to them what's going on. And she doesn't. She just runs into the temple and naturally gets captured because Nakago can sense life forces.
Because Nakago has, completely convenient powers.
He's so overpowered. And okay, I wasn't going to talk about Nakago till later. Do we want to? No, let's wait. We'll talk about Nakago later. But yeah, he is frustratingly overpowered. And it becomes more and more, and it starts to get really bad. I think this stretch of episodes on the one hand, I do kind of like the concept of a hero team who are just completely outclassed. Like, they're not, none of them are particularly well trained. I mean, they're talented, but they're not. The Seiryu warriors are significantly better than them. And I think that's an interesting idea, because I don't think you see that in fiction all that often. Usually it's a little bit more evenly balanced. And so it kind of forces the characters to find ways around, like, they can't just face people head on. But it also ends up leading to this sense of, like, Nakago can just do everything, I guess.
Well, and it's severely tainted by the fact, I think, like, knowing that Nakago is Watase's favorite character. It starts to reek significantly of bullshit.
The amount that she likes him is, like, I think as a writer, like, you do have to have a certain kind of fondness for your terrible villains.
Absolutely.
I think that's part of writing. But yeah, the amount of affection she has for him is a little. It starts, like, reading the author's notes. It starts to get a little eye rolly at times. It's like, come on, he's awful, right? Like, he's absolutely terrible.
Yeah, like,
again, I always like the terrible characters, and I cannot stand this fucker.
Like, no amount of tragic childhood trauma,
which
will excuse that.
Yeah, and shit. Okay, you know what? Screw it. Let's just talk about it now.
Let's talk Nakago.
So, yeah, this is the week where, like, I mean, obviously we talked last week about how there's really no way that you can make Nakago sympathetic. And this is the arc where there are a few characters in fiction where they come on screen at a certain point. My middle finger just, like, flips at the television reflexively. Somewhere between Nakago hurting my boy and his whole dance puppets dance speech when he's, like, facing off with Miaka and Tamahome, that's the moment where it's like, and middle finger's up, and it's just going to be up every time you talk. I really don't give a damn about your backstory, Nakago.
Oh god, the whole moment of, like, why do you... Really? Now you're asking about his motivations now, when we have a dozen episodes till the end of the series? I don't care.
Yeah, like, you fucking burned all those bridges. There's no why to it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I get the curiosity of, like, why the hell would you be helping the country that exterminated your people? I understand the bafflement that is in that question, but the fact that it comes up now,
Yeah. For the character, yes. For the narrative, this is poorly paced.
yeah, but
It's a bad decision.
this is the first hint we get of Nakago having perhaps a tragic backstory. Certainly his people, the Heian tribe, were wiped out 14 years ago. So, yeah, it's real late in the game, but it's there.
Also, did you forget that he's an evil bisexual? He's an evil bisexual.
God, yeah, him kissing Tamahome.
Oh yeah,
just
when
to
he
fuck
says,
with him, basically.
When Soy's like, "Why do you never take off your heart's armor for me?" He's like, "There's only one person who I would want to stand by like that." It's like, I think that you're supposed to think the answer is Yui, but my brain immediately went to Tamahome.
He has this like, and again, it is kind of it. His interest in Tamahome feels more like kind of this. Look at this sweet naive kid. I want to destroy him. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes,
But
it's
also,
It's very icky.
yeah.
well, and also the fact that Nakago is probably like 30 and Tamahome is 17.
He's 25, I think. But yeah, I mean, there's
20s.
there's still a decent age gap between them.
An age gap specifically at a very important maturity juncture.
Yes. Nakago
Truth.
is a goddamn adult, and Tamahome is a child.
He's had to grow up pretty fast, but I know what you mean
Yeah.
when you say that, for sure.
All of this aside of the fact that also Nakago is terrible. And again, I'm a very large fan of Hannibal. I'm here for murder husbands, but he doesn't deserve this shit. Nakago sucks, and he's terribly written.
Well, Nakago's not. There's nothing like he's not a charismatic villain. The reason that he is dangerous comes almost exclusively from the fact that he is dealing with teenagers.
Well,
Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, no, it does.
Because of the situation and time that he met Yui, that's where a lot of his danger comes from, is because now she is very dependent on him because he's gaslighted her into believing that she can't trust anybody else.
Yeah, and he's really good at like manipulating vulnerable people. And I mean, like, even Soy is it is implied through flashbacks in these episodes that she was she was abused, and now she's like totally devoted to Nakago, who is like couldn't give less of a shit about her. So he's just sort of someone who like finds vulnerable people and uses them to his advantage. And he's just shit. Like, he just, like, I don't have anything more eloquent to say about it off the top of my head. He's just a garbage man.
I think it doesn't help that his because he's kind of effective as a villain in that first season, but he's effective as a force of nature, not as a character with flaws and motivation. So now it's trying to make us feel bad, like, oh no, he might regret that he lost his toy because she died. I don't care. You're not a character who, like, you are a force for our characters
sacrifices
to react to.
herself for him.
Yeah, and he carries the body instead of discarding it. Yeah, it's like,
and he has this kind of like shocked moment when she jumps in front of the sword, and it's like, you really have not done enough here to get me to
it's
really
not earned.
Buy into this. Yeah.
Like, we know so little about Soy, and I wish we knew more, because
Yeah.
I feel like I could have liked her as a character if she had more to her than just lightning powers and obsessively in love with Nakago.
Right.
Like,
she plays so hard into the evil, sexy woman trope for so much of her screen time than this.
Like,
well, and then she becomes sympathetic woman because she devoted herself entirely to a man who didn't give a shit about her.
Yeah.
So she ends up being like completely. Her character is defined entirely by her relationship to Nakago.
Yes, and it's like there are hints at an interesting character there, like the moment where she tells Miaka where Tamahome is, even though like them dying would have been completely to her advantage as a Seiryu warrior. Like, there was something like interesting. There was a hint at a psychologically complex character right at that moment, but there's, they just sort of leave that behind, and it's all like her just wanting Nakago to love her.
Yeah, Soy is the bones of a character type that I really, really like, but she's just not well developed.
No, most of the villains I think don't get with the semi exception of the twins. Most of the villains don't get developed early enough or in depth enough for you to really care about them. So,
or they're just
there is a light novel
evil.
Or they're just straight up evil, and they're just cackling bad guys, and that is the end of them. So one thing I do want to say about these kind of early episodes as we slide into the Seiryu arc, well and truly, is that in spite of the frustrating bullshit in the early going, there are some, like, it's kind of made bearable by the fact that the supporting cast is back, thank God.
Yay! The boys are back in town.
The boys are back in town, and that allows them to have characters kind of play off each other a little bit better. You get these moments, you get some moments where Miaka can kind of have like a slapsticky moment with Chichiri, and then Hotohori shows up again, and I kind of thought she'd go and throw the mirror and break it.
Hotohori is decent for the first time.
There is this arc. The last couple of stretches of episodes, this one and the one following, I remember mostly for like the dramatic action beats, and I forget that there's still some pretty good jokes in here. I have to say the part where the Byakuya warrior Tokaki is seriously talking to Tamahome, and then is like, "There's something else I must tell you. That wood is rotten. You shouldn't lean on it." And the balcony collapses and Tamahome falls over. Like, got a full belly laugh out of me because I had completely forgotten that scene was there. And moments like that, I think help with the story. And again, it's because Tamahome and Miaka have other people they can bounce off of, and it gives you some breathers from the relationship drama. And Sweet Toski actually calls Tamahome out on his shit, which you need characters like that. Like, again, I miss Chiriko, and I am glad that Toski is able to kind of step in and be like, dude, why aren't you talking to her? What's going on?
He's such a good boy.
Stop being a dick. Boy. Yeah, he's very good. So yeah, I think that helps.
And his boyfriend comes back, which is nice.
Yes, Toski's boyfriend is back.
His boyfriend's back. How many ridiculous musical references can I make?
At least one per episode. And keep the number coming, Caitlin. I approve. Koji returns to help fight in the war because he and Toski are the best ship in the entire show. So that's great.
Well, they are now. I'm sorry, okay. I'm still very sad.
But yeah, so I mean, speaking of supporting characters, there's another one who's back, and we also have this time around some Byakuya warriors.
Yay!
So I figured we could talk about them. We've kind of already talked about Tatara and Suzuno. Although one thing I do want to say that I thought was really interesting is I was reading the manga, and while watching it, and it's very different. Because all the stuff with Keisuke and Tetsuya, like, sleuthing around, trying to figure out what's going on with the past priestesses, that does not get shown in the manga. Huh. It happens because when Miaka gets back to the real world, Keisuke basically just sits her down and, like, just info dumps for, like, 2 pages of the manga on her. And there's a bunch of big speech bubbles where he kind of talks about what they did. So the fact that they wove that in, I think, was a good choice.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I want to know what's going on with the oddly informed taxi driver. What's his anime like?
He's an anime original character, and he's fascinating.
Right.
Let's give him a spin-off light novel. And the other thing is the big, like, dramatic, like, Tata and Suzuno reunited in death and their ghosts, like, hang out together is anime original as well.
Okay, I wondered, because while I was watching that bit, I was like, I bet this is interesting in Genbukaden.
Well, no, that's Genbu Kaiden's the different priestess.
Byakko.
Right.
This is the Byakko priestess. Watase, I believe, is currently writing the Byakko arc that she said she was eventually going to do. I really need Shoujo Beat to license it, and then I want to read the crap out of it because I'm curious to see how she develops that story.
Yeah,
as well, and then we finally have all the priestesses.
Yeah, because I really enjoyed the Byakko characters. Well, I enjoyed Subaru.
I love Subaru. This is kind of what I wanted to talk about with these characters specifically. Subaru, it seems very cool.
Yeah.
I like that she doesn't get a lot of screen time, but I like that she has a little bit of a kind of a mentor relationship with Miaka off and on.
I would have liked more of that. It was very good.
Yeah, and then when they decide to age themselves down, when he's like, age me down, she's like, you ain't doing this alone. He's like, yeah, I couldn't talk you out of it anyway. And I'm like, you seem neat. I like you, Subaru.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, Tokaki, Tamahome's master, is a crappy pervy old man trope, and I don't like it.
No.
I don't care for Tokaki.
I mean, I don't know. For some reason, I was warmer on him than I usually am on these sorts of characters. It's not something that I can easily explain. But like, I think it'll be really cool seeing these characters sort of in their own story.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I was thinking about it, because in, all of the ones we've had their full stories told, it was mostly the warriors falling in love with the priestess, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would honestly I would like to see a story where it's not all about the warriors falling in love with the priestess. Like, two of the warriors themselves fall in love. Because
that is a good point. You don't see that in the well, spoiler alert, you don't see that in Genbu Kaiden either.
Yeah, because Tokaki and because there is one female warrior in Genbu and she's awesome, but she's not. It's not a romantic lead sort of character for a variety of reasons. But seeing sort of Tokaki and Subaru, seeing their story, I think will be interesting. Because that is something, them having something in their lives that does not just center around the priestess. So yeah, bring on Byakko Ibun.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited for that. Okay, so as we move forward in the narrative, I guess we're to the part where we talk about Chiriko and Miboshi. I guess I have one thing about Miboshi. My friend and I call him the floating baby. And that's all I got. I'm like, why did you put a baby in charge of your temple? This seems like a mistake, Seiryu. And that's all I have on Miboshi. He doesn't have a character. He possesses people. That's his character. He seems like a bad dude.
And he's evil.
I had a very weird deja vu because I swear I didn't read this far, but also when that scene came, I was like, oh yeah, he does die, doesn't he? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was
and
weird.
It might just be one of those things that you kind of picked up by existing in anime fandom,
Quite possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
this also gave me flashbacks because I remembered the way I learned about Miboshi's character is not from the anime. Mm-hmm. Pioneer about 10 million years ago when they were first putting out the series and when they were called Pioneer instead of Genion, and they existed as a company.
Right, and when Genion still existed, children.
Many eons ago.
They had trading cards with character profiles on them.
Oh, okay.
And that is how I learned about Miboshi and how I learned about Soi's backstory. And so watching this, it was like, oh yeah, that was a thing that existed. There was a period where Pioneer / Genion was actually trying to make this happen because I also had some from X.
Oh yeah,
X.
they were throwing in some bonuses, which is kind of neat.
I lined up at the booth at Anime Expo to get those cards.
Oh, that's adorable. Memories. Yeah, that's all I have on Miboshi, but I think we can definitely talk about Chiriko. One of the kind of bummers of this stretch of episodes is that Tasuki and Chiriko have a pretty cute relationship in the manga that just gets left on the cutting room floor because there's a lot of other stuff they wanted to do instead. But it's a very intense sequence, and I thought that episode was surprising. Like, I mean, I think most of the time, obviously Fushigi Yugi has its quality moments that we tease it about, but I think most of the time it looks fine.
Most
that
of
episode
it looks okay.
That episode looked good.
Yeah,
there were a lot of pretty fluid action sequences. The detail work on the characters' faces, like especially during the death scene, was like intense and
very expressive animation.
Yeah, it was really expressive.
I was going to make a terrible joke that like seriously nobody can put this child out of his misery a little faster.
Yeah, it was a lot more intense in the anime. In the manga, it's pretty much just like tell everyone thank you. And here they really kind of hit hard at the fact that like Chiriko put himself through a lot of pain in order to save his friends,
which I think he deserves. But
yeah, it's not a bad death scene, but I think the problem is that Chiriko is kind of a non-character in the anime. So like he talks about feeling like he can do this even without his mark, but we never really go into the fact in the anime that part of the reason he didn't feel worthy was because his mark appeared inconsistently. Like that's not. I wouldn't have noticed it at all if you hadn't brought it up while we were while we were recording. So it doesn't, and like his relationships to the other characters too. I feel like they try to cram it in a lot in the episodes running up to this one, especially in the little comedy scenes. But it's a lot of too little, too late. Like it's a well executed scene, but it doesn't feel earned in a lot of ways.
I agree. I was not, like, it did not hit me nearly as hard as, like, Noriko's death, where I was just, like, lying on the couch sobbing.
No, Noriko's death is devastating.
But, like, it was more like, oh, this is sad.
Child's dead.
Yeah.
Like, the part that really got me was, like, when, he was like, oh, you can go on without me. And Mitsukake and Tasuki were sitting there with him, like, we can stay. We don't want you to be alone right now.
Yeah.
Like, that was what got me.
Yeah, me too. And I think sometimes you end up with these, and this is true with fiction just because you can't necessarily flesh out every single character. Sometimes you have deaths that are impactful and emotional because you were really attached to that character, which Noriko would be that. Sometimes you have deaths that are emotional because characters you care about are upset.
Yeah,
Tasuki's reactions are pretty good in that they're sad.
And so Mitsukake staying with him, even though we can't actually heal him, and Tasuki being very upset about Chiriko dying and like telling him how brave he is that's where the emotion, that's where the resonance of that scene comes from, is these characters you like being upset.
Yeah, I agree.
And in that sense, I think that the anime in particular, because you get that in the manga, but the manga really kind of rushes through a lot of this stuff. The anime gives these moments time to breathe. And so I think the anime is able to hit that resonance a little bit better because we have some time sort of watching everyone realize this kid's going to die. And how hard that is on them.
Via what appears to be some kind of internal perforation because he is not bleeding enough for it to be blood loss.
He's holding the thing like against his, like in his heart. So I'm pretty sure his heart. He stabbed himself with that. There's an official name for it, and I just can't. I should know what that's called, and I don't. And now I feel like shitty that I don't. I'll look it up at some point. But yeah, he stabs himself with that, and so that's he dies from it being in his heart. I'm pretty sure, which is rough.
It is not realistic in any way. Like, if he stabbed himself in the heart, he would probably have died a lot faster.
Yeah.
But then we couldn't have a last sad speech.
Yeah.
One last thing about Chiriko dying that I did kind of want to talk about just in terms of my memory of this show is I was much sadder when Noriko died. I was much more surprised when Chiriko died because I'd read the Redwall books as a kid. I was not I was accustomed to a beloved character dying in adventure stories, but it was usually one character. And it was a big emotional moment, and then pretty much everyone else made it. So when Chiriko dies, there was this sense all of a sudden that like, oh shit, nobody's safe. oh shit, what if everybody dies? Especially because very shortly after this, they lose. The good guys lose. They don't summon a god. They get their powers sapped. Suddenly, with Chiriko dying, my friend and I looked at each other. We were like, "Oh no, who's going to die next?" And it became almost like a stealing ourselves guessing game for like who else was screwed. And I very much remember that because again, at the time I had watched this series, like that wasn't something that really happened in young adult fiction in particular.
Right. Like, and this is going back to like, well, you know, Fushigi Yugi, part of the draw of it when you're young is it has this edge that not a lot of fiction that we had encountered before.
And this willingness to go, no, when you fuck up, there are consequences, sometimes really bad ones. And those things just happen and you have to find some way to push past them. And this kind of recurring theme of like, you have to give these sacrifices meaning comes up again here as Miaka runs off to try to stop the ceremony, which she does not do. I was going to say that might be a good way to a good place to segue into talking about Miaka and Yui in this stretch of episodes, since we're getting towards the summoning ceremony itself.
I will say two things. First of all, I've been trying to hold really hard to the fact that Miaka and Yui's relationship is a really good story about friendship, and they're very cute and they're good friends. There is a moment where I think it's Nakago, somebody is like, well, are you jealous? Are you jealous of Miaka or Tamahome that they're together? And I'm like, all right, are you trying to make me ship it now? Because like I've been trying to be good, but also
yeah.
You wouldn't be the first one.
No, and I think within the context of the story, like they try to make it very clear that it is a very close friendship, and how do you deal with your friend suddenly having this other relationship that's very different from yours.
Right.
And Yui kind of feeling like she's been abandoned, and Miaka has chosen Tamahome over her, even though from Miyaka's perspective, she loves them an equal amount, just in different ways.
Right, which isn't a good and important story. That happens, I think, a lot to teenagers.
I really like that
relatable.
That's here. Yeah, well, and I really like that Fushigi Yugi makes a point of saying, no, these two relationships are equally important to this character, because I think you very much get this in a lot of fiction, maybe more so in Western media than in anime. Oh, it is getting rumbly over here.
Yeah, I heard that loud and clear.
Yeah. Again, we're summoning Seiryu!
No!
No, I think you get this more in Western fiction, this idea of like, the quote unquote just friends. This idea that like being more than friends, or like friendship not being as important. And so I think the fact that Miaka is trying very hard to have both these very important relationships is good and valuable in a story that's also, this kind of first love romantic teen drama thing.
Definitely. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say is that in this stretch of episodes, the podcast #1 Yui cheerleader, started to get a little frustrated.
Yeah. No, this is Yui, I think, at her most intentionally nasty. And it is kind of right before the series and Yui herself start. It's like she's pushed herself to this point of like, I'm a bad guy now, and then she really does something that's like, she just plays and tricks her friend. And then sort of immediately after that kind of starts to realize the consequences of this very angry, sort of hurt battle she's been having with her friend. And so, once she starts summoning Seiryu, she starts to feel like she's maybe making a mistake. Like, did I really love Tamahome, or am I just upset because Miaka abandoned me?
Yeah.
Or because I feel like Miaka abandoned me?
Not even that. Like, I think the traitor thing aside, which is a little is I think I'd group sort of under the fuck Lord, yet another thing of forced miscommunication. Fine, whatever.
Miaka conveniently loses her voice.
I meant specifically the moment where Yui is like lurking under the window while they embrace, like it's a damn scene from Dynasty, and I'm like, oh God, come on.
Yeah. The timing of that convenient dramatic timing is a little eye roll worthy, I think, and sort of frustrating. What I think might be worth taking from that is the fact that Yui appears to have been going over to Miyaka's house to have a conversation with her, finally. And so the fact that she then sees Tamahome, like the fact that she is there suggests that she came to like check with Miaka, which I think, again, is one of those moments that sort of sneakily tells you like how Yui actually feels, as the show has been pretty hard at hammering. Like, no, you do love Miaka. She is still your best friend, despite Nakago's constant, endless gaslighting, and he can feel her pushing away, I think, in this stretch of episodes,
right.
And so then he really digs his claws in.
Right, like, here's a special memento of me that you can use to talk to me anytime you want. Like,
well, and he tells her what she really wants to hear, which is like, I love you. I'm never going to abandon you. I trust you. I'm, all you need is me, basically.
Yeah, like
again, he insulates her.
He manipulates her, and he has her convinced that they are in love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this poor child.
Like, and honestly, the amount of fiction I read where there are romances between girls in their teens and adult men that, like, honestly, like, treats it like it ain't no thing, is huge. So I honestly, like, actually kind of appreciate that, like, the genuine romances are between teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
And, or, like, any, like, or, like, the honest crushes, while the, like, romance between, and I just did quotation finger quotes, between an adult and a teenager he is manipulating her for his own ends. Like, he has no genuine interest in her.
Yeah, and the series does not play that moment where he says, I love you, and kisses her. Does not play it as romantic. Like, it's in the dark. There's all these sort of the framing in that scene is really good. There's all these kind of like tangled trellises, lattice work, like on the windows, and it's very much this sense of Yui being like caged and trapped, and him kind of like pulling her in. And it is ominous. It is an ominous scene. It is not played as like, oh, look at this love blossoming between Yui and Nakago. It's not that at all. Mm-hmm. So give the story credit for that.
Absolutely. For sure. Yeah, no, it's Yui's, for the most part, I feel like some of those elements of Yui's arc are certainly very unusually daringly handled for the day.
Yeah, it's a lot better than I think I remembered it being. I thought at a certain point Yui kind of went like full cackling villain, and she doesn't. The series does a very good job of again sort of not necessarily 100% excusing everything she does, like when Tamahome leaves after she drugs him, and he's like, I can't. This was a bad thing you did. I'm sorry. Like, I feel sympathy for you, but this was still a bad thing you did. While still having that sympathy and like being very upfront about, or upfront, yeah, I guess that's the word, for how Nakago is manipulating her and how Miaka wants to help her get out of this, very toxic, dangerous relationship she's in with this guy who's been lying to her from day one. In the meanwhile, despite Yui's wavering, she does summon Seiryu. As I said, our heroes lose badly, which again is pretty wild. Like, that's usually in fiction there are like hiccups and roadblocks, but like they go into this war and there's very much the sense of like, welp, we're all screwed. They outnumber us 3-1. I guess we're just going to die.
This show seems to think that a war is one really big battle where everybody gets on their horses. Like, okay. It is not well depicted.
There is sort of like a fort in the background that I'm not sure if fort is the exact right word, but like a castle town sort of thing. That they're trying to defend on the border, that ends up falling. And yeah, it's not, the war element is kind of weird. But it's fine. It's all drama anyway.
Right. It's just there so you can have the dramatic moment where Nakago is entirely overpowered, and then they...
Oh my god. Well, and at that point, nobody has abilities, so they're riding up against a guy who is like, they can't even like deflect his blows anymore. He'll just freaking kill him.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens there. He messes up Mitsukake. Mitsukake gets like knocked off his horse pretty bad. And then Koji thankfully comes along and saves him. Can I also point out that for some damn reason, Chichiro is the only one who doesn't get armor, and this annoys me. They all
he's
ride
just
into
a guy
battle,
now.
and
He needs armor now.
and they've all got armor except him for some reason. So in the visual novel, it's kind of suggested that like you don't have to be a celestial warrior to use like chi abilities. So like he's not nearly as powerful, but he can still do some stuff. In the anime, that is not made clear if it's even true at all. So yeah, he's kind of just a sitting duck out there. Good thing Mitsuke jumped in front of that blast with his armor on, I guess, because my boy would have died.
Oh. I do feel I am a little bit upset at the anime because normally I hate that trope where it's like, no, you have to stay behind. I have to protect you. But like in this particular case, Miaka has no business on that battlefield.
No.
There's a few of them who go out to fight, and I'm like, why are you there? Because again, my friend and I were sort of like the first time I watched this, to kind of deal with our extreme anxiety over the fact that our these characters we loved might die. Specifically Tatsuki and Chichiri. We started almost like taking bets on who was gonna go down next. And we figured Hotohori would be okay and we'll talk about Hotohori in a minute, but we figured he'd be okay because he'd be at the palace. We figured Mitsuke would be like in a wounded tent and he'd be fine. But then like he rides into like to the front lines too, and I'm like, this seems like a mistake, Dr. Man.
Yeah, Mitsuke has never been a fighter.
No, but he puts on armor. He gets armor and goes, sorry, I don't know why I'm hung up on that, but I am hung up on that. But, okay, so a couple of things I did want to talk about in this last stretch of episodes before we go back to the real world, which then we'll touch on that a little bit too. The first is that, as I just mentioned, Hotohori is back in the game. Welcome back, Hotohori.
You're bearable now.
Getting laid seems to have mellowed him out.
Yeah, and when they lose their powers, his first response to Miaka is, hey, why don't you try getting laid too?
He's like, Miaka, you and Tom. He seems genuinely supportive of the two of their relationship. So kudos Hotohori on getting over that, I suppose.
Finally.
He's still a bad emperor, you guys, because at the very end of this stretch of episodes, he's like, I'm going to go lead the army from the front lines. And I'm like, that is a terrible idea, leader of the country, who currently does not have an heir.
Right. So you're just going to create a power vacuum by trying to showboat, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And once again, dude, you don't have powers. You're the leader of the country. You need to not die. Like, it'd be one thing if it was like the enemy is at the gates of the capital. They have stormed their way to the capital, and Hotohori was like, welp, once more into the breach. I bid you stand, men of the West. They may take our lives, but they'll never take our Independence Day. He could, there could be a rousing, like, we're doomed moment at that point. But but they're not at the palace yet, and he is like, I'm going to go to the front lines. And I'm like, please don't. Please don't. That's a mistake.
Yeah, please, do not abandon your new wife and the country. You're like your new wife who has only been running the country for a couple of months.
Oh my god!
But let's talk about Rebound Empress. Vrai, you sound like you want to talk about Rebound Empress.
I don't think I'm actually mad at Hotohori. I think I'm mad at you, Watase.
Yeah. No, that's probably fair.
If only Chiriko had been possessed of a vagina, perhaps Hotohori would have learned to love them. Fuck you.
Yeah,
yeah, it's shitty. There is. I don't want to get into this too much because, well, the big thing here is like they get home and it's like, oh, by the way, I got married.
Completely
Cheers.
off stage to this character who is a non-character.
None of you have ever met this character. You know nothing about this character. Actually, there is a light novel that fills in all of the gaps there. I won't get into it too much here because one of the OVAs does actually tell part of that story. Mm-hmm. The one element I will bring up is that Hoki and Chiriko were friends in the palace harem. They met and were buddies, and their relationship is really cute.
Aww.
Because Hoki has like no interest in Hotohori, and so and then the fact that they realize how much they look alike, and Hoki's just like a farm girl who got dragged into this kind of against her will, which was not super uncommon when creating harems at the time. But Noriko kind of looks after her because she's much more naive than Noriko is, and yeah, it's cute. Noriko sends throughout their travels with the warriors, like in as they head towards Hokan, and when they're running around the country, Noriko sends letters back to Hoki, and so Hoki like gets to kind of follow along on their adventure. It's a sweet relationship. So
see, that's all kind of nice, but this is here though. She doesn't have any character, so she's literally just. What if Noriko had been a cis girl?
Yeah.
No, I like Hoki because of some of the supplementary material that eventually gets written for her. But as of this point in the anime, it's like,
who?
What the hell? Yeah. Who are you? And like you said, like if only Noriko had a vagina, which is some bullshit.
Well, and maybe I'm extra mad because of that author's note you posted in our Slack chat. Which, my God, you Watase.
Yeah, I wonder if I can sum this up for the readers. Basically, Watase, it's very cringe-inducing in a lot of ways, and I think is indicative of a mentality in the mid-90s in particular. Where Watase's like, yeah, I initially made Noriko gay for comic relief, and then I realized that they were actually a person, and this was like a legitimate character trait. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's rough. And then
there's
Watase goes on to talk about like, I guess you'd consider it something like it's not really homosexual love since Noriko sees themselves as a woman, so
or like specifically
love, which was the term at the time.
Yeah, like specifically they loved Hotohori as a woman, so I guess it was more of and I'm like, you don't.
No, Watase has no idea what she is attempting or doing with Noriko's character. That's really the sense that you get from that author's note is like Watase doesn't really know anything about queer issues and probably didn't do much research beforehand, other than maybe like a handful of manga that were probably not super educational.
Yeah, like this is all pretty typical for. It time.
Is. Yeah. I mean, but it's one of those things where it's like, I think it is relevant from a historical perspective, but it makes it tough to pass the story forward in time. It dates it in a way that is noticeable and kind of painful. So
like, if we were still in 1992, I guess you could say how nice that you Watase created a stereotype character and realized that the gays are people too. But it's 2017, and I'm tired.
Yeah. It's that very difficult line between like the historical context of something versus how well it holds up in a modern context.
Yeah.
And in that modern context, not so much, which we've talked about at length.
Definitely.
Before.
Yeah.
But it rears its head a little bit here too. One other thing happens before they go to war and then get sucked back to the real world, which I kind of wanted to talk about, and that is that Miaka and Tamahome decide that, well, maybe we should just like bang now that we can. Let's do it. And I really like that scene.
It's
nice.
It's
actually
a
really
nice
sweet.
Scene.
It's very so. First of all, I like that Tamahome kind of admits he's like, I know this is like terrible and selfish of me, but in a way, I'm kind of glad that you get to stay here and we can like consummate and like get married and consummate our relationship. And he's like, this is a dumb thing to talk about before a battle. I should leave. And I like that Miaka instigates it. She's like, no, stay. I want us to spend the night together.
I want us to fuck.
Yeah, I mean, basically, again, Miyaka's thirsty, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too because it's kind of wonderful. I like that. And then I think the scene of them almost having sex and then something goofy happening and then going, you know what? Let's wait. This isn't the best time. Let's just go to sleep.
It was just very sweet.
Right.
It's very cute and it's very honest. And I think it feels a lot like, awkward teenagers like trying to sort of figure out how to do the sex.
Yeah. Well, and also the idea, like, I think there's an idea in romance that all times when you start having sex, you must do the sex, and it will be good and amazing, mind blowing. No, sometimes you just decide let's not.
Yeah, sometimes you don't even get started because somebody's stomach growls very loudly, and just Tamahome just laughing and being like, "Oh, that's adorable. It's fine. It's fine. Let's just go to sleep."
It's nice.
Yeah, it is. It's a nice moment.
Yeah, like it's very sweet and affectionate. I don't know, like, and just like the art in that moment and the way they were sort of drawn together, was very like pretty and like had a very like intimate feeling to it. I don't know. It sort of everything came together for that scene.
It did. Well, and again, I think when we talk about in the context of, again, and I mean, Caitlin, I know you're with me on this one too. I love shoujo manga. I love the genre. But you get a lot of relationship sequences where the girl kind of gets pressured into it, or sex just isn't talked about, period. And so to have a female character who is, proactive about being attracted to somebody and wanting to be with them.
Generally speaking, there's a lot of like the boy pressures her, and she's like, "Oh no," but then like she's like, "Oh, I actually really want this," and it's like, boy, there could not be a less healthy lesson in that one.
That's baked very much into Japanese fiction in general, like going back to the Heian era.
Yeah.
Is this idea that like it was considered almost like in the great elaborate. I read so much about the Heian era, so I have all this information that I'm now going to share some of with you. There was in this sort of elaborate courtship game that was played at the time. It was like the woman was not supposed to seem too like eager, or it was considered like a turnoff, which is shitty for a lot of reasons. And Tale of Genji actually it sort of accidentally touches on the reasons that's shitty, and it's shitty for both. It's shitty for both parties, truthfully. But this idea of like the woman kind of not being into it, but then actually being into it and going for it like at the last second is baked very much into the literature, again going back to like the 900s at least, maybe further back than that, but definitely that Heian era. And then you see it in Edo period literature as well. Mm-hmm. So it actually is kind of a big deal that Watase goes, no, my this girl I have written is
DTF.
Is DTF. She is sexually active. She likes this guy and she wants to have sex with him. And she will make the first move. And I appreciate that quite a bit about this stretch of episodes. Mm-hmm. But they end up not. They just go to sleep, and Toski finds them curled up together the next morning, which is a bit awkward for him, but it's amusing. And then they go to war. And then Yui sends them home, and Tamahome comes with them, which doesn't seem like it should happen, but it does, so that's cool.
Because of something emotional plot logic.
Listen, again, it's shoujo. The answer is feelings.
Yeah.
The answer is always feelings.
It's always feelings.
You know what? Fine.
And I'm okay with this.
Really. I'm okay with it. It's whatever. Yeah. It's feelings.
And you know what? I love that kind of plot contrivance. So I was totally cool with it.
Yeah, I'm on board. This stretch of episodes is like action packed, and then we get that. Then they get back to the real world, and we get a little bit of a breather, which is nice because it's going to get action packed again next week. Just heads up, folks.
Well, I'd hope so. Next week is the finale, so
yeah. So you would expect the finale to be action packed, and it definitely is. I did not really have much of a memory of that episode of them first getting back to the real world. I love that episode. Keisuke is so good.
He is so good.
He kind of became the Big Brother audience surrogate character somewhere along the line.
Oh, absolutely. By virtue of reading the story the same way we were. So he has like that fanboy moment when he meets Tamahome, and then he gets really excited when he realizes he's written in the book. He's like, I'm in the book, yay!
And it's interesting because he didn't know what Tamahome looked like.
No, that's true. He did not.
So when he sees Tamahome, he's like, oh my god, you're even cooler than I imagined. This is his first time making visual contact with this guy. All he's had is like these sketchy, old-fashioned line drawings in the book. So it's like a big fanboy moment for him.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he's so like when you think about big brothers in media in general, but definitely in anime. They're either evil or they're like overprotective, and Keisuke's like really cool with Tamahome being with Miaka. Like he teases them, but it's very loving. Like when Miaka comes in to give Tamahome a kiss good morning, and Keisuke's in bed with him. So nice. Hey there, newlyweds. But yeah, like he's pretty sweet and like wants the best for the two of them and is trying to help them out. When he gives Tamahome a makeover and Miaka about loses her mind, is one of my favorite moments in the story, and it was a moment I had completely forgotten was in the story. But it was one of those really fun moments that I don't think you see a lot of in fiction, where a female character is like super turned on by how good her boyfriend looks, and I just kind of liked it, and I thought it was cute that Keisuke was all excited about giving Tamahome a makeover.
Yeah, Keisuke is just, he's a sweet, sweet boy. He just wants his little sister to be happy. And, since he's been reading the book this whole time, like, he's seen, like, how genuine Tamahome is. Like, he knows he doesn't have to fight him off. He knows that he doesn't have, like, ill intent towards his little sister. But also, he's just, like, throughout the whole series, he's so consistently supportive to Miaka. Like, I still remember in the first episode where we meet him, Miyaka's telling him this like crazy shit, and the look on his face is just like, what are you talking about? But he doesn't sit there and tell her she's crazy. He's like, okay, so this is
assuming this is true. Yeah.
Okay, how are we gonna respond to this? So yeah, like, I don't know. He's just so sweet. And there's a real sense that like he and Tamahome could be friends.
Hey, remember when we could have big brothers in anime without a brother complex?
The good old days. Yeah, I remember those days.
I want more anime like that.
Me too. I want more loving and supportive familial relationships in my anime.
Yes.
That sounds lovely. More of that for sure. So yeah, so that last episode's mostly a breather. It gives us some time to kind of have fun with Keisuke and Tamahome in the real world. There is some trouble on the horizon. At some point, they are going to have to let Tamahome know he is a character in a book. They keep it from him this week.
Again, I thought we'd covered this, but sure, fine, whatever.
In this one instance, I understand why they're not trying to explain it to him yet, because he's already been like zipped out of his own world into this new world. He's got culture shock. They don't have the book with them, so it's a lot harder to explain without like the actual without the words in front of them. So I understand Keisuke's reasoning of like, we'll ease him into it. Once we have the book, then we can kind of explain and he can see it and have the proof there.
But shouldn't Keisuke know that Yui already confronted Tamahome with this fact?
Yes.
But like I said,
probably.
He should, but also whatever.
I think like she
Tetsuya
mentioned
might have
it,
been reading
but
the book at
they
that point.
never really explained it, so it just sort of, it's probably something that has been like way in the back of his mind, but not something that he's really tried to figure out what exactly she meant.
Yeah,
and also I don't know
that.
if did he talk about Miaka with that, or talk about that with Miaka, or did he just
she asked what was wrong and he changed the subject because
so she doesn't know how much he knows.
No, Miaka doesn't know. So yeah, in this instance, I kind of understand that, but I think it is worth noting that Tamahome still doesn't know. So that will probably come as a shock to him when it does finally happen. There's also some foreshadowing in the book that Nakago might be coming to this world. Thank you, Tetsuya, for reading the foreshadowing to Keisuke and letting us know that might be on the horizon.
Yeah, he wants to be like a god, because there was not already enough overpowered Nakago, right?
I was going to say, because Nakago does not feel like he has all of the power yet. So, which, I mean, it's very true to Nakago's character from what we know of him, is he's very much about power and control. So him wanting to become a god fits with that.
But also it's a very boring motivation.
Yeah.
It is. And I like that. I find it amazing that when Yui's like, hey, I'll save you a wish since you've been helping me out all this time. What's your wish? And he says, I want to be a god. She doesn't go, what?
Right.
She kind of just takes it in stride.
Like, have you never read a book, Yui? You're
God,
smart.
I just remembered something that I wanted to talk about. Like, I wanted to talk about it while I was watching the episode, but then I forgot until just this moment.
Okay.
The moment where Miaka summons Seiryu, and he's like, I will now couple with you, and you will get your 3
yeah.
wishes. And like, it's not like he like actually like, bones down with her, but like when he enters her, it's like her body language, like her fingers curl, and like it's like, oh, okay, like this is very much a metaphor for sex right here. This is Yui having her first orgasm, and I just thought that was sort of an interesting thing, considering like the way that the gods and sex have interplayed throughout the series.
Well, and it kind of comes back to that idea of like the priestess needing to be pure.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she's like giving herself to the god. And I mean, yeah, it's...
What's up, virginity fetish?
Can I be incredibly foul for a second here?
I wish you would.
Sure, why not?
The gods do not want any sloppy seconds.
I was thinking it, and I'm glad you said it.
I mean, yeah, you're
Which is
not
a horrible
wrong.
thing to say.
It's a horrible thing. Yes, but also
sometimes you just gotta be a little foul, right?
My life.
Hey, when you are right, you are right. So,
no, but like, yeah, like, obviously there's nothing wrong with having sex with more than one person.
I think we've
life.
covered that this show's sexual politics are kind of a hot mess.
Yeah, well, and again, we have these really good moments like Miaka and Tamahome's scenes this week, and then we have these kind of like gross implications with the gods that maybe Watase did not think fully through. By the way, Miboshi's spindle is called a prayer wheel. It is a
okay, that's what I thought it might have been.
Yeah, yeah, it's a prayer wheel. So I feel better now. Sorry, it was bothering me that I did not know what that was. He's a bad priest.
Yes, yes.
Sorry,
Also,
I took us completely off topic, but I wanted to get that in.
It does give us an opportunity to mention the single worst out of context screen cap ever.
Oh god, the subtitle team. Okay, so let's set the stage by saying that in the manga, the line is children are particularly easy to control, I believe, or children are particularly easy to possess. When I was playing the visual novel, I translated as children are particularly easy to control. In the subtitles, the line is children are particularly easy to enter. And then I threw my head into my palms and I buried it so deep. I just hid in the couch.
You buried it so deep, you look like the My Hero Academia villain.
Yes. Good reference, Caitlin.
Yeah, in the dub, it was easier to dominate.
That doesn't help.
Not great. Not great dub, but I mean better, but not great.
Is it? Is it?
Yeah.
Is it better?
Phrasing, folks.
Yeah,
Sometimes I wonder if there's a translator somewhere who's like, oh no. Still, like, to this day, they think about that line and they're like, oh no, what did I do? Yeah.
Mistakes were made.
Mistakes were made, and now we have to live with those mistakes in subtitle form for, I guess, ever. Yep. Unless someday Funimation or somebody decides to redub and resubtitle it, which does happen, it turns out, with shows, so who knows?
I don't think it's going to happen with Fushigi Yugi.
With all the kindness in my heart, I sincerely doubt it.
Our watch-along could spark a Fushigi renaissance, and the Byakko manga, too. You know, all I'm saying is maybe we're starting a movement here.
Well,
I'm not
Fujiko
being
Mine
serious.
did slightly re-spark an interest in Lupin in the United States, so I guess there's precedent. I feel your pain is what I'm saying.
I mean, it respawned an interest in Lupin in Japan.
Too.
It revived a stagnating franchise.
God, the TV specials. We can't do that. I can do that all day.
Okay.
We'll have a Fujiko Mine podcast. We swear that's something we'll do. But today is not that day. I mean we got through all of the things, you guys. We ran a little late, but that's all right.
People like it when we talk too much, right?
Well, it balances out because last week we were really struggling to find things to talk about. I'm not sure we made it an hour last week, so it balances out this way, I
we
figure.
were a little short.
The Badlands
but
were
yeah,
bad.
that gets us. The Badlands were bad, and now we're back into some engaging, entertaining again. There's some bullshit to wade through, but that's par for the course.
It wouldn't be Fushigi Yugi without at least a little bullshit.
Yeah, it's the sweet and the sour for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that takes us up to the end of the episodes we watched. Are there any other comments, critiques, things you wanted to call out? Fun jokes?
Koji was really good.
I'm so glad Koji's back. I love Koji. He's another one of those characters, kind of like Koki, who gets fleshed out in the light novels a little bit, and I like him a whole lot. So it's nice that Toski has a boyfriend who comes to help him in dire straits.
Yay!
So. Yay, Toski! I wish the two of you nothing but happiness.
Yay! I think that's all.
That's all. We just
out, D.
We just needed to remind everyone that the trash bandits are good boys.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll play us out then. Okay, folks, that's a wrap for this week's watch along. If you're following along at home, the next Fushigi Yugi podcast will cover episodes 47 through 52, also known as the furious finale, the captivating climax, the dramatic denouement.
The last time I get to only watch 6 episodes instead of like 20.
Well, it's the last pod. Next week will be the end of the TV series, at least. We still have a basket full of OVAs to tackle, and we will be tackling them. But for now, just focus on the first series ending, where I'm positive everyone will hug it out and let bygones be bygones, and it'll be fine, right? We'll have a nice, chill final 6 episodes here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you enjoyed this episode of Chatty AF, we'd love it if you'd tell your friends or leave a nice review for us on iTunes. And if you really liked what you heard, please consider tossing $1 or more to our Patreon each month. Your support goes a long way towards making Anime Feminist happen, both in print and in your earbuds. If you're interested in more from the team and our contributors, please check us out at www.animefeminist.com, on Facebook at AnimeFem, on Tumblr at AnimeFeminist, and on Twitter at AnimeFeminist. And that's the show. Thanks for listening, AniFam. Stay away from any floating babies, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.